was born and raised right here in Fairbanks, Alaska. On my mother's side, her family comes from the small village of Rampart, which is located north of here along the Yukon River. And my family has a fish camp located on Hess Creek near the Yukon River Bridge.
Well, Noah, I'm really excited to learn kind of all about this here. Before we get into the salmon itself, can you tell us about some of these buildings and structures that are around you?
Sure, that sounds great, Skylar. This area right here is what you would typically find along the Yukon or the Tanana rivers in the summer months. Each summer, families will pack up and go to about 30 miles away from their village to their respective family's fishing camp. Now, the centerpiece of every fishing camp is, of course, the fish wheel that we see right up front. That is an efficient fish catching machine that allows us to catch enough salmon to sustain ourselves and also our dog teams in the winter months. Farthest away from me, we have canvas wall tents, which a family might choose to stay at when they go out to fish camp. Right beside me, we have our outdoor air drying rack where we like to hang our salmon before taking them into the smokehouse. That large permanent structure you see directly behind me. The smokehouse is the key to turning each salmon into a lightweight, dehydrated, and fully preserved food source. Right beside our smokehouse, we have our cache, which is a storage shed built up on stilts to keep the contents inside off the damp ground and also away from animals. But speaking of animals, in between our canvas wall tents, you can see some dog houses. We always like to bring our dogs to fish camp because they act as a natural alarm system if any large, unwanted game animals were to come to the area.
Right, you definitely don't want a bear or a fox coming in and taking all of your hard work. That makes sense. And now, speaking of work, though, I can see you've done some on that salmon out in front of us. Can you tell us a bit about that fish and how you've prepared it?
Sure. This one right here is a silver salmon. Now, here in the interior, we get 3 types of salmon. 1 run, each of the king of the silver, and 2 runs of the chum. Because the chum are a slightly lesser quality of the other 2, we usually like to save that fish to make the food for our dogs. But just because we're doing a demonstration here, I'll just demonstrate the basic dog food cut on the silver salmon with you today. I've already cut off the head of the salmon and also cut 2 fillets, kept attached at the tail, cut along the backbone. As you can see, there is still quite a bit of meat left on this backbone. I'll go ahead and cut this off right now and give it to the dogs here at fish camp. And then if this were a head of a higher quality salmon, such as a king, a silver, or a sockeye, then I could use it to make fish head soup, which we would then serve to our elders, and it's considered a delicacy.
Fish heads,
All right, Noah. Fish head soup. I'm curious. What does that taste like?
I don't know, Skylar. Never had any.
I suppose you're not quite an elder yet, so I'll check back with you here in about 30 years. Does that sound okay?
That sounds great.
All right, fair enough. Now, Noah, what is it that you're doing with the fillet right now?
Well, right now I'm storing the salmon, and this is creating diagonal cuts through the meat down to the skin, creating a larger surface area, allowing the smoke from the smokehouse to work itself deeper into the salmon, further dehydrating and preserving it.
Okay, I can see how that almost opens up like a vent to help the smoke get in there. That's beautiful. And now, Noah, you mentioned that you don't put it straight into the smokehouse from here, though. Why is that?
Well, you never like to place a wet or dripping salmon right into the smokehouse because it might mold. So I'm just going to put it on the outdoor air drying rack, or on it that is. Then we'll take it into the smokehouse, rotate it around in there for about 2 weeks until it's fully dehydrated, weighs less than a pound, and looks a little bit like this.
Okay, now I'm really impressed you managed to get that whole thing down under a pound, but I don't know, Noah. It looks a little bit tough to chew. I'm sure the dogs are happy with it, but how would you prepare it if it was for you or me to eat?
Well, there's actually quite a few things we would do differently for people. First, we'd start out with a higher quality salmon, such as a king, a silver, or a sockeye, cut and clean them out very well. We like fillets as demonstrated, but they can also be cut into small vertical pieces called salmon strips. Either way, they'll be soaked in a brine of brown sugar, honey, salt, and then placed on the outdoor air drying rack and then taken into the smokehouse for probably just about 3 or 4 days, since we like a softer texture. And then finally, the wood that we use is different. We'll use alder wood or cottonwood since they're sweeter woods. But for the dogs, spruce wood or driftwood, they're not too picky.
No, I'm sure they're happy with whatever they get. Well, thank you so much, Noah, for showing us around Fish Camp here. And as we get pulled up to the mooring area, can you tell us about some of the other things we'll be seeing in the rest of the Chena Village?